Good morning. Welcome. I am Samuel Trapp, and this is International Flavor, and I'm coming to you live from where? The Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio on this beautiful, cloudy, highly overcast, somewhat cold Wednesday. The greatest day in radio is beginning even now. Even as we speak, the day is beginning. I get to start the day. It's a very good day for damn radio today. I like Wednesdays. Plenty of content for us all. Beginning with good music. We have lots of good music here on damn radio. I may even share some with you today. It's possible. It is highly possible that I share some with you. I have been dinking around with the computer trying to log in. And, you know, there's something that drives me really bananas. And I don't know how people feel about this, but drives me freaking crazy. Is two-factor or double-factor, whatever the heck they call it, authentication. So, you know, the computer gets to dictate how you operate your computer. It's highly irritating to me. It's frustrating because, heck, you never can remember. And then it makes you change your password. And when you change your password, you can't use the password, any password that you've used before. So you got all these people thinking for you, and nobody gives a rip about my passwords. Least of all me. I just don't want to have, 50 different passwords, and they just don't, they don't jive. Drives me freaking crazy. And it's even worse with double factor authentication because you can never log into your own stuff. At any rate, here it is Wednesday. It's you're welcome to phone in this morning, 573-746-8020. I am unable to log into my computer from afar. That's frustrating. And I wanted to start this morning with a rather amusing story, I think, anyway, about here it is. By the way, today is my wonderful deceased father's birthday. Today he would have been, what would he have been today? 30. He was born in 38, and so that would make him 88 today. Isn't that correct? I believe he would have been 88 today. And, yeah. He was a good man, and that means he died 19 years ago, in about April, and he was a very good man, and miss him, and that's could use him on the scene about now, so he could keep a couple of idiot family members in line that are just being destructive, and it's freaking irritating. I'm watching the news now. By the way, I just missed a man, and I want to talk to you a little bit about Trump. I've been watching the news about the moron move of, we're going to steal Greenland. Vance and Rubio are going to meet with Arctic leaders. Geez, that makes me feel... makes me feel safe. The lunatics are guarding the nut house. This is, we need to take Greenland. Nobody gives a flip about Greenland, nor should they. And it's just nonsense that we create a big nothing burger of an issue and try to convince the world that it's critical to our survival that we take Greenland. Yeah. Nonsense. But the news of the day on the 14th is Trump has flipped off a worker who called him a pedophile protector. The video is interesting And it sure looks like you flipped the dude off to me. So the U.S. president has faced harsh criticism over transparency on the Epstein files. The old Clintons are refusing to testify about the very same thing. And U.S. President Donald Trump has been filmed raising his middle finger and appearing to mouth F you at a Ford auto worker who heckled him during a factory visit near Detroit. Or is it Detroit? Detroit or Detroit? Curious. The insult was linked to the controversy over the Epstein files, which Trump has sought to play down after previously promising transparency. Yeah, it's always transparency. Transparency for the, but not for me. Actually, I don't give a rip about any of this. This Epstein stuff is just a distraction, in my opinion. But what do I don't even freaking care. It's been twisted so much at this point. Who really gives a rip? The confrontation happened on Tuesday at the Ford F-150 assembly plant in Dearborn after a worker shouted, and I watched the video, he shouted something first, but I couldn't understand it. And then he said, "Pedophile protector! You pedophile protector!" The guy's dead. How are you protecting a pedophile? According to a video circulating on the social media, Trump turned toward the worker, uttered several expletives, and flipped off the heckler. White House Communication Director Stephen Chung did not comment on whether Trump had actually raised his middle finger, but confirmed the authenticity of the video. He said, "A lunatic was wildly screaming expletives in a complete fit of rage." He didn't seem to be in a complete fit of rage to me. And the president gave an appropriate and unambiguous response, Chung said in a statement to the Washington Post. So TMZ says, President Trump was filmed flipping off a Ford worker who yelled, "Pedophile protector," at him. The worker, T.J. Sabula, a 40-year-old UAW Local 600 line worker who described himself as an independent and occasional Republican, said he has been suspended pending an investigation. Why would he be suspended? Does that mean we should suspend Trump for flipping him off? And he did say he felt no remorse, that this Sabula felt no remorse. As far as calling him out, definitely no regrets whatsoever, Sabula said, adding that he believes he was targeted for political retribution for embarrassing Trump in front of his friends. Can't even get away with calling somebody a pedophile protector these days. The taunt appeared to be tied to the ongoing political storm over the files of disgraced financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who is said to have died by suicide in a New York jail in 2019. And we're still talking about this yahoo. He's been dead for a long time, and we're still talking about it. While awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges, his death spawned widespread conspiracy theories, claiming he had been killed to prevent testimony about alleged crimes involving powerful figures. If you think powerful figures don't get away with whatever they wish to get away with, you better think again, because they do. On the campaign trail, Trump promised to release the Epstein files, but as president, he has bristled at the issue, dismissing calls to make the documents public as politically motivated hoax. The controversy intensified after the U.S. president's name appeared in Epstein-related material, with no allegation of wrongdoing. Later, amid sustained public pressure, the Justice Department released a batch of Epstein-related documents that were heavily redacted, prompting criticism over the scope and pace of disclosure. Isn't that horrible? What a story. What a story. Can you believe we're still focused on this? Let's focus some more on it because people love to hear about this. The Clintons have refused to testify in the Epstein inquiry. The House Oversight Committee Chair, James Comer, has threatened to hold them in contempt of Congress. Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness, this is terrible. Former U.S. President Bill Clinton and Secretary of State Hillary have refused to comply with subpoena to testify before the House Oversight Committee investigation into the government handling of the Epstein case. Where is it, Epstein? We don't know. We don't know. Oh, geez. Why are we still showing pictures of this Goomba? There he is again. We're showing him. Lindsey Graham. You gotta show. Lindsey Graham all over the TV. It's frustrating. Anyway, back to Epstein and Jeffrey Epstein. The committee had scheduled depositions for Bill Clinton on Tuesday and Hillary on Wednesday. In both an 8-page legal letter and a separate signed public statements, the Clintons declared the subpoenas invalid and legally unenforceable. Every person has to decide when they have seen or had enough and are ready to fight for this country, its principles, and its people, no matter the consequences, the Clintons wrote. Well, I'm glad to see they're together on this. You know, Chairman James Comer, who's a Kentucky Republican, who left an empty chair at the deposition table to mark the former president's absence, expressed disappointment and pledged a committee vote next week to hold Bill in contempt. No one's accusing Bill of anything, any wrongdoing. We just have questions, Comer told reporters. If the full House votes for contempt, the Justice Department would decide whether to prosecute. This refusal comes as the Justice Department continues to release thousands of pages of files from the Epstein investigation. The first batch, which was made public in December of 2025, featured numerous photographs of Bill with Epstein and his associate Ghislaine Maxwell, none of which include contextual details or dates. Clinton's documented ties to Epstein date to the late 90s and early 2000s. Flight logs show Clinton and his entourage took multiple international trips on Epstein's private jet, often referred to as the Lolita Express, traveling to locations such as Bangkok, Brunei, Rwanda, Russia, and China. Epstein also visited the White House multiple times during Clinton's presidency. The Clintons have repeatedly said they possess no relevant information and had offered to provide sworn witness statements, similar to other high-profile figures, excused from live testimony. Their legal team argued that the subpoenas are politically motivated, an effort to harass them and distract from President Donald Trump's own alleged associations with Epstein. Clinton spokesperson Angel Urena previously called for the release of all Epstein files, accused the Justice Department of selectively releasing material mentioning the former president and implying wrongdoing where none exists. Isn't that depressing? Oh, tell you what, it's pretty sad when the government is hunting you down and you're just nothing but innocent, you know? It's, you know, when you haven't done anything and the government continues to come after you, it's just frustrating. Like old poor Bill and Hillary, or Billary and Hill. But let's share an older article, shall we? Where the Congress warned the Clintons over the Epstein case. Again, James Comer. He said, any attempt by the ex-presidential couple to avoid subpoenas will constitute contempt of Congress. Now, this came out in November. Remember this? It was right before Thanksgiving. You're supposed to put the stress in the proper word, Thanksgiving. Isn't that right? U.S., this is an old article, but we're going to share it with you because this is a warning. And then we got to talk about a Wall Street Journal article, too, that shows how guilty Bill Clinton is, right? This is the twist. We're supposed to believe that he is, you know, just a terrible, terrible person and a horrible president and all kinds of stuff. I actually lived in Washington, D.C. when he was president. That was fun. I wore a T-shirt down near where the Washington Monument is, and the Capitol Mall just starts down there. And I wore my T-shirt, which said, it was a bright yellow T-shirt, and it said, I don't trust President Clinton or her husband. That was the joke way back then, that the pants in that family have always been worn by the old Hillary. We used to call it, they were tagged at the hip, since they were joined at the hip back during the presidency. We called it the Billary element. Anyway, let's share this article from Ancient History, which was right before Thanksgiving. U.S. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer demanded that President Bill Clinton and his wife, Secretary of State former, testify before lawmakers about the late. He's always going to be late because he's never going to arrive because he's dead. About the late convicted sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, he warned, Comer did, that failing to comply with subpoenas issued earlier this year would mean serious consequences for both of them. Epstein, convicted of sex offenses in 2008, was charged again in 2019 with trafficking minors and running an underage sex ring. He was found dead in a Manhattan jail cell later in the year. According to a press release from the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform on Friday, Comer, quote, sent a letter to Bill and Hillary, Clinton's attorney, David Kendall, saying that they are required to comply with lawful subpoenas and appear for scheduled in-person depositions. He noted that both Republicans and Democrats on the committee approved a motion to issue subpoenas to Bill and Hillary in July. Given their history with Epstein and Maxwell, any attempt by the Clintons to avoid sitting for a deposition would be grounds to initiate contempt of Congress proceedings. The document states that Bill had been summoned to appear on December 17 and Hillary the following day. The ex-president previously admitted he traveled on a jet with Epstein, but that he had never visited the financier's infamous island. Wow. In July, Wall Street Journal claimed that Clinton had once written a personal note to Epstein that reportedly read, "It's reassuring, isn't it, to have lasted as long across all the years of learning and knowing, adventures and," illegible word, "and also to have your childlike curiosity, the drive to make a difference, and the solace of friends." Well, that's curious. A spokesman for the Clintons declined to comment on the note at the time, stating that the former president had severed ties with Epstein long before his 2019 arrest and was unaware of his alleged crimes. In a post on his Truth Social platform last Friday, remember this is November, U.S. President Trump said he had directed Attorney General Pam Bondi and the Justice Department to investigate Epstein's involvement and relationships with Bill Clinton and other prominent Democrats. On Wednesday, Trump signed a bill requiring the Justice Department to release files related to Epstein. And in his post, this is back in November, by the way, remember I'm sharing an older one, Trump suggested that perhaps the truth about these Democrats and their associations with Epstein will soon be revealed, mentioning Bill Clinton among several others. Trump's move marked a shift from his earlier positions. Yeah, isn't it terrible that we are still focused on this happy, crappy, and even me, excuse me, I wanted to keep talking about Greenland because I can't believe how silly the whole thing is. And like I told you, we're going to have Rubio and Vance discussing things. There's several articles about this, allegedly. Trump is threatening Greenland's leader with a big problem. It's going to be a big problem, a huge problem, apparently. And this came out yesterday, too. A big problem. U.S. President Trump has dismissed Greenland Prime Minister Jens Friedrich Nielsen as someone he doesn't even know and is threatening him with a big problem after Nielsen reaffirmed the island's commitment to Denmark over the U.S. The confrontation over Trump's ambitions to acquire the Arctic island reached a new peak at a joint press conference in Copenhagen on Tuesday, where Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen and Nielsen presented a unified front. If we have to choose between the United States and Denmark here and now, we choose Denmark. We choose NATO. We choose the Kingdom of Denmark. We choose the EU, Nielsen said. The comments, made on the eve of high-level talks in Washington between Danish and Greenland officials and U.S. Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio, drew sharp retorts from Trump. That's their problem, Trump told reporters at Joint Base Andrews. I disagree with him. I don't know who he is. I don't know anything about him. But that's going to be a big problem for him. Trump has argued that the U.S. must control Greenland to prevent Chinese or Russian dominance, an allegation disputed not only by Moscow and Beijing, but also by regional officials. One way or the other, he said on Sunday, we're going to have Greenland. The threat comes amid a legislative move by Florida Congressman Randy Fine, who introduced, I shared with you yesterday, the Greenland Annexation and Statehood Act, which would authorize the president to take whatever steps necessary. Danish officials have rejected the premise, with Ambassador Jesper Moller Sorensen saying he made it abundantly clear to Fine that Greenland is part of Denmark. While Copenhagen has expressed willingness to deepen security cooperation with the U.S. within the NATO framework, it insists the island's future lies with its own people, who voted in 2008 to retain self-governing status within Denmark. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte declined to comment directly on the dispute, saying his role is to ensure security in the Arctic. I disagree with that. NATO's role isn't to secure security or to provide security in the Arctic. It's to provide security within NATO countries. I don't know where they just keep stretching stuff. We just make it up as we go along. I think it's a bit silly. Let's see here. I'm yawning a bit this morning. Sorry about that. We're going to stay on the Greenland topic, though, because there was something entertaining. A jellyfish has more spine than Europeans, said a professor on Trump's plans to annex Greenland. Any European troop deployment to the Arctic over the imaginary Russian and Chinese threats will be symbolic, says Greg Simons. Europe is too weak to stand up to U.S. President Trump's ambitions to bring Greenland under American control, said journalism professor Greg Simons. Last week, Trump stated that the U.S. must annex Greenland, a Danish self-governing island, to contain Russia and China, claiming the two countries would take over the island unless Washington acted first. Several media outlets since reported that the UK, France, and other European states are discussing plans to send ground forces to Greenland to signal that they take Arctic security seriously. They're all nuts. Speaking to RT on Tuesday, Simons, who teaches at Daffodil International University in Dhaka, Bangladesh, said European governments lack the strength and will to resist Trump. A jellyfish has more spine than these Europeans and the EU at this stage, he argued, calling their stance hypocritical. Commenting on the reports of a potential deployment, Simon said such a move would be largely symbolic. Any European troop presence in Greenland or a wider Arctic will amount to a token number of troops facing an imaginary threat of Chinese and Russian destroyers and submarines, he argued, adding that even Denmark acknowledged that there are no such vessels in the area. Rather than reflecting strategic autonomy, the idea shows Europe trying to placate Washington. It's an attempt to try and appease Trump, he said, adding that the message to the president would be, see, we're helping you, so there's no need to annex Greenland. He argued, Simons did, that deindustrialized Europe is gutted and has very pathetic-sized armies which are nothing to speak of, leaving Europe unable to compete with the U.S. for control of Greenland or the wider Arctic. Denmark insists that Greenland is not for sale and that the island's future must be decided by its own residents who voted in 2008 for self-governing. Beijing criticized Washington for using Russia and China as pretexts for a deeper push into the Arctic. Moscow has not yet officially responded to Trump's latest remarks, but it previously stressed that Greenland's future has to be determined by its own citizens and dismisses claims that Russia poses a threat. But we're America. We just make stuff up as we go along. If we say Russia and China are problems, by God, they must be, right? They have to be. Is everybody watching this? There's supposed to be a transgender case. Isn't it in sports coming up in the Supreme Court coming pretty soon? There's more. I'm giving you a whole bunch of opinions on other people on this Greenland thing because it's just a bunch of nuts. we are talking about. There's another guy called John, what is his name? John Varoli, who has spoken too. Western European nations are vassals of the U.S. and will inevitably submit if Trump moves to annex Greenland, said American journalist John Varoli. Well, who is this guy? The U.S. will not let European powers deploy any troops to Greenland because Washington, they want total control and conquest of Greenland. They can threaten, they can throw tantrums, and make all the joint statements they want, but the U.S. always gets its way, he said. The Europeans, at the end of the day, let's be very clear, they are the vassals, and they will have to do whatever Washington says. NATO is the U.S., said Varoli, recalling how Secretary General Mark Rutte called Trump daddy at a summit in The Hague last June. The European powers know that Big Daddy is in charge. The Big Daddy in the White House, he said. Trump wants to go down in American history as the greatest American president. And for that to happen, he thinks it means acquisition of new territories and conquest. I don't think he thinks that. I think... Well, it doesn't matter. Let's finish the article. Denmark has insisted that Greenland is not for sale. Once again, we've talked about, and then we have Randy Fine, the goof, saying Trump should take whatever steps necessary to annex Greenland. Nuts running the nut house. I'm telling you, we got Trump flipping people off. We got lunatics. A Trump envoy was not welcome at a Greenland dog sled race, according to the organizers. Jeff Landry, the organizers of Greenland's premier dog sled race, have said the presence of U.S. President Trump's envoy, Jeff Landry, at the event would be wholly inappropriate, and launched a probe into his alleged invitation. He has openly backed Trump's push to incorporate the island into the U.S. Yeah, on Sunday, he, Trump did anyway, said that, the two dog sled remark, remember that? And Landry, who was appointed by Trump as a special envoy to Greenland in December, told Fox News Radio last week he intended to attend the annual Avanata Quimusersua dog sled race in March, and used the occasion to speak with locals about the benefit of closer ties with the U.S. According to him, he said, I'm interested in talking to Greenlanders. In fact, I got invited, I think, to the world's largest dog sled event that goes up in March in Greenland. I'm going, Landry said. In a Facebook statement on Tuesday, the Greenland Dog Sledding Association said it was unaware who issued the invitation and called Landry's potential presence inappropriate, giving his public advocacy for annexation. The Dog Sledding Board finds it unacceptable that political pressure is being exerted from outside and considers the participation of foreign political actors at the race wholly inappropriate, said Chairman Mikkel Jeremiason, adding that he had ordered an internal probe. Landry has openly called Denmark's rule of Greenland an occupation, and he urged the island to claim their independence to gain the U.S. as an ally. His appointment as envoy prompted Copenhagen to summon the U.S. ambassador, interpreting the move as a breach of diplomatic norms by treating Greenland as independent rather than an autonomous Danish territory. Denmark has condemned Trump's rhetoric as a direct threat to its own sovereignty. Greenlandic Prime Minister reiterated Tuesday that Greenland will not be part of the U.S. and that if they are annexed, this would mark the end of NATO. But Trump envoy, this guy, the genius, he says, this Landry, he says that Denmark is occupying Greenland. The U.S. defended the island during World War II when Copenhagen couldn't. Denmark is occupying Greenland in violation of UN rules, says Special Envoy Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry. We know about the story of what he said, where Trump said one way or another that we're taking it. He argued that Copenhagen is unable to provide security because they only have 2 dog sleds up there. That's the defense. Landry took to X to note that U.S. protected Greenland during World War II. U.S. military facilities were set up on the Arctic island in line with a deal between Washington and Copenhagen in April 1941, a year after Denmark was overrun by Nazi Germany. History matters, he wrote. The U.S. defended Greenland's sovereignty during World War II when Denmark couldn't. After the conflict ended, Denmark reoccupied it, sidestepping and ignoring UN protocol, said Landry. The Danish ambassador responded to the accusation, saying that Greenland has been a part of the Kingdom of Denmark for centuries. That has repeatedly been recognized by U.S. administrations in the UN and internationally. Only the people of Greenland should decide their future. A vast majority of Greenlanders voted yes to its self-governing status, he wrote. Copenhagen has always stood shoulder to shoulder with Washington. He noted that Denmark lost more soldiers per capita than any other NATO ally during the U.S.-led invasion of Afghanistan. A total of 43 Danish troops were killed in the country from 2002 to 2014. Let's continue to address security challenges in the Arctic as partners and allies. And, staying on this topic, this is real. I happen to agree with this, that it is delusional to claim that Russia and China pose a threat to Greenland, according to a Danish MP. Yeah, it's absolutely true. Russia and China pose no threat to Greenland, said a senior Danish lawmaker. On Sunday, Rasmus Jarlov, the chair of Denmark's Parliamentary Defense Committee, sparred with security expert Valina Zakharova, who claimed that European nations do not take the threat from Russia and China seriously, have not been paying attention to what was happening in the Arctic in the last 10 years. Jarlov wrote on X, without clarifying who he was referring to, I am head of the Defense Committee of Denmark. I get all relevant information. I can assure you that your fantasies about a big threat from China and Russia against Greenland are delusional. You are the threat, not them. Russia, whose western border lies more than 3,000 kilometers from Greenland, has provided few comments on Trump's push to acquire the island. only insisting that the wishes of Greenland's population be respected. Polling suggests that there's little appetite in Greenland to join the U.S. Moscow also dismissed speculation that it has plans to attack Western countries as nonsense. China has denied that it seeks to control Greenland and pushes back against Trump's Bananarama rhetoric. He's nuts. After Trump claimed that Greenland is covered with Chinese ships, he hasn't shown a picture of one. Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Jiang said Beijing urges the U.S. to stop using the so-called China threat as a pretext for itself to seek selfish gains. On Saturday, the Daily Mail reported that Trump has ordered generals to draw up a plan for a potential invasion of Greenland, with sources warning that it would lead to the destruction of NATO from the inside. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Well, it's a strange old world. That's all I'm saying. It is all I'm saying. We're just going to steal land. We've stolen Venezuela. Apparently, we now own Venezuelan oil. We just took it, and it's ours. The end. Nuts. The whole thing is nuts. We're a bunch of lunatics running around the world stealing stuff from people. But you know what? Let's shift gears here, because I read an interesting article about an interesting lady. Her name is Yulia Tymoshenko. And Yulia Tymoshenko is an ex-Ukrainian PM targeted in a vote-buying probe. Former Ukrainian Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko has confirmed that her party's office has been searched by law enforcement as part of parliamentary vote-buying probes. Detectives from the Western-backed National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, NABU, and the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor Office, SAPO, announced on Tuesday that a parliamentary faction head was under investigation without naming the suspect. But she said it's her. So on Wednesday morning, she confirmed that her Batkivshina Fatherland Party was targeted overnight, dismissed the move as a grandiose publicity stunt, and denied any wrongdoing. Little bit of coffee for me. Shortly afterward, NABU announced formal charges against a female suspect accused of creating a mechanism for regular long-term payments to MPs following her instructions. The development came after a series of key votes in the Verkhovna Rada required to enact Vladimir Zelensky's latest government reshuffle. Tymoshenko blamed unspecified rivals of persecution and terror against her, implying that the case was politically motivated and linked with hypothetical elections in the country. Parliamentary and presidential elections are banned in Ukraine under martial law, and Zelensky has retained presidential powers despite the fact that his term expired in 2024. During her decades-long career, Tymoshenko has faced criminal prosecution multiple times and was sentenced to prison for abuse of power under former President Viktor Yanukovych. She spent a year in jail before being released early after Western-backed Maidan coup toppled Yanukovych. Yes, Batkyivshchina votes were crucial in several key parliamentary decisions, including the bill last summer that stripped Nabu and Sapo of their independence. Zelensky reversed that move under Western pressure and blamed lawmakers, mostly from his own party, who voted for the amendments. On Tuesday, Tymoshenko and other MPs from her parties voted to remove Vasily Malyuk as head of the Domestic Security Service, SBU, at Zelensky's request. Securing the proposal's passage, the reshuffle was triggered by a Nabu investigation into corruption, again, in Ukraine's energy sector, which led to the resignation of Andrei Yermak and 2 other ministers. Wow. The Zelensky-backed candidate for energy minister, former Prime Minister Denis Shmyhal, failed to secure enough support after MPs agreed to remove him as defense minister. Parliament did not approve a replacement to lead the defense ministry. Isn't that sad? Meanwhile, Zelensky is complaining. Gee, there's a surprise. Zelensky's complaining? Who'd have thunk it? Kiev's European backers are too slow on weapon purchases. Those damn Europeans, they're not giving us weapons fast enough. The Ukrainian leader complains of insufficient pace on funding for a scheme to buy U.S. arms. Terrible. Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky is complaining that the backers, moves are insufficient. On Tuesday, he spoke after a staff meeting on defense issues and claimed major issues with the prioritized Ukrainian requirement list, the Pearl Initiative. Prioritized Ukraine requirement list. It's a NATO-coordinated mechanism designed to pool mainly European funding to buy weapons from the U.S. to be sent to Kyiv. The plan was launched in August as European governments look for ways to continue supporting Ukraine's military after the old Trumpster ended direct arms supplies and argued that the conflict should be primarily addressed by Europe. What matters is the real and timely fulfillment of all agreements with our partners. The Pearl Initiative needs funding, and progress in January has been insufficient, said the Z-Monster. While Zelensky did not provide figures, funding has indeed lagged behind the targets of previous months. Mark Rutte, NATO Secretary General, said in November that overall investments in Pearl were expected to reach $5 billion by the end of the year. But by late December, publicly disclosed figures showed only $4.3 billion had been committed since August, including almost $1.5 billion in December. Political friction inside the EU has further complicated this matter. According to Politico, Germany and the Netherlands wish to ensure Kyiv can use an EU-backed 90 billion euro, which is $105 billion, loan to buy U.S. weapons. French President Emmanuel Macron, however, has argued that EU funds should be used to purchase European rather than U.S.-made weapons to enhance the bloc's military industry. In addition, while most NATO members joined the Pearl Initiative in some form, several countries, notably Hungary, Italy, and Slovakia, have declined to participate. Russia condemns, of course, Western arms shipments to Ukraine, saying they only prolong the conflict without changing the outcome. Ain't that just the truth, friends and neighbors? So I've been following, of course, as you all know, the advances toward the West by the Ruskies, by the Russian forces, and they are continual, and they are occurring steadily, pushing westward more and more. The latest troop numbers aren't doing any good. You know, the troops are not insufficient to take care of anything. And there's all kinds of, you know, inner turmoil in the regime of Zelensky. You know, that Yermak and who else is gone now? What was his name? Schmiegel, Denis Schmiegel. Who held the post for less than 6 months, and he served as prime minister before that, and he was defense minister. They got rid of him. They got rid of, you know, he stepped down last week. Ongoing cabinet reshuffling, ongoing bribery, ongoing everything. And a Kazakh-commissioned tanker was attacked by Kiev. 2 Ukrainian drones hit the ship on Tuesday. 2 Ukrainian drones were involved in an attack on an oil tanker on the Black Sea Tuesday. The incident involved crude oil tanker Matilda, reported by the Kazakh-owned oil company Kazmunai KMG, whose subsidiary commissioned the ship to pick up cargo at the Russian port of Novorossiysk. The shipment was part of the operations of the International Caspian Pipeline Consortium, which transports fuel extracted in Kazakhstan via Russia to international markets. According to the Russian military, the Malta-flagged vessel was attacked 100 kilometers from the Russian city of Anapa around 10:15 a.m. local time. And earlier on Wednesday, footage purportedly showed a kamikaze drone striking a second tanker, the Delta Harmony. Ukrainian officials declined to comment on the incidents. Moscow accuses Kiev of deliberately targeting CPC infrastructure on Russian soil. Last November, after Kazakhstan protested disruption of its exports, Kiev argued that Russia is responsible for damage caused to foreign nations by Ukraine. So the Russians are to blame if Ukraine attack Kazakh ships. I don't get the logic of that. That's why I'm laughing at that, as you should be as well. Russian officials say Kiev is resorting to terror attacks. Yes, that's true. Has anybody, I mean, I'm sure everybody's been following, and I'm so tired of it. It's yesterday I shared with you how many incidents, some 66 or something like that, when we counted them and went through that gentleman's video, which I followed on online and shared with you. Now, illegal sanctions pressure is the root cause of protests in Iran. And according to Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova. I watched her. That was an interesting commentary. And basically, the allegation is the West is seeking regime change in Iran. Of course, that's what we do. We wonder if we're going to seek regime change in Greenland. We'll go up there and kidnap the leader. We can kidnap the Greenland leader and just say, well, we're taking all your stuff. We're taking all of your ice. And we're going to take everything there, and we're going to take your all of your dog sleds. We're going to take everything important to you in Greenland and kidnap your president or your leader. Take me to your leader. And since we did it in Venezuela, why can't we just say, we say that Denmark is illegitimate. I just shared some articles up there. Maybe we could just go, send the military to capture the, to kidnap and charge him with some kind of a anti-Trump crime and just bring him to New York. That's what we do these days. We just charge them with crimes that, you don't even have to commit in your own country. It's law enforcement. What else is it? It's law enforcement. I mean, why don't we just charge the man with a crime, go kidnap him, bring him to New York, install our own, say everything underneath the, any resources are ours, and move on. It's acceptable these days. This is what we do. It's what we live for. This is what Americans accept as reality these days. We just go, steal countries. And it's all wonderful. And we might as well do the same. I mean, this is what we're going to do in Iran, right? The West is seeking regime change in Iran and is using the color revolution playbook, says Maria Zakharova. And foreign nations want to turn a peaceful protest into a cruel and senseless unrest, she said, and added that Moscow condemns interference in Iran's internal affairs. But U.S. President Trump openly expresses support for protesters in recent days, and he said the U.S. is locked and loaded for regime change in Iran. He wants to support the demonstrators. America will start shooting if authorities use force against the crowds. Israel openly endorses the unrest as well. The intelligence agency Mossad is admitted to having operatives in the Islamic Republic. I wonder if Israel has operatives in Greenland too. Oh my God. We could take Mossad and the CIA and put a color revolution inside of Greenland. Holy crap. How come I'm the one that has to come up with this idea? This is the playbook. Why can't we do it in Greenland? We've done it everywhere else. This is how it works. We just go to Greenland and, start a color revolution. We can condemn those and say, listen, we're going to rile up some protesters. Maybe we could pay some protesters, and that'd be that. Wow. Tehran blames the protests in Iran on Washington and West Jerusalem, arguing the U.S. and Israel have had a big hand in the unrest. Russia resolutely condemns disruptive foreign interference in Iran's domestic politics, Zakharova told journalists on Tuesday. Washington's threats to use force against the Islamic Republic are unacceptable, she said, warning that strikes against Iran would destabilize the entire Middle East. The spokeswoman also blames the economic crisis in Iran that triggered the protests on Western sanctions. The West has been pressuring Iran for years with illegal sanctions, she said, adding they are affecting lives of ordinary people. Western nations are trying to exploit the resulting social and economic tension to destroy the Iranian state, just like we did in Venezuela, and we're going to do in Greenland. We should do this. You know what? We should sanction Greenland. We should sanction Greenland because they won't give up. They want to be Denmark? Ha! What gives them the right for self-determination? They don't get that, just like Iran doesn't get that. The protests erupted in several Iranian cities on December 28 as the national currency, the rial, hit a record low. They quickly spread to other cities and turned political and violent, marking the worst unrest in recent years. On Monday, Trump said Washington is considering options against Iran. On Tuesday, the U.S. warned Americans to leave Iran immediately. Tehran previously warned that it would target U.S. forces in the Middle East if Washington attempted to intervene. Once again, getting into places we shouldn't be. Here's another genius for us. The U.S. Department of War has announced a new strategy to accelerate the military's use of AI, aiming to establish an AI-first fighting force across all domains. The plan, mandated by the old Trumpster, focuses on 7 projects expected to enhance combat capabilities with new AI tactics and simulations, speed up intelligence processing to develop new weapon systems, and automate internal military administration and workflow. U.S. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth said the U.S. will invest heavily in expanding access to AI computing power and tap into hundreds of billions of dollars in private capital flowing into American AI. A key directive within the strategy orders the eradication of woke DEI from military AI capabilities. He argues that diversity, equity, inclusion, and social ideology have no place in systems designed for combat. Gone are the days of equitable AI and other DEI and social justice infusions that constrain and confuse our employment of this technology, said Hegseth, the Secretary of War. We will not employ AI models that won't allow you to fight a war. Well, it's most important to be at war. He also announced the Department of War personnel will soon be able to use Elon Musk's Grok AI through genai.mil, a website that already provides a specialized version of Google's Gemini AI for government use. Very soon, we will have the world's leading AI models on every unclassified and classified network through our department. Long overdue, says he, the Secretary of War. Hegseth noted the Pentagon will be taking a wartime approach to people and policies that block AI implementation and has established a barrier removal SWAT team with authority to waive non-statutory requirements and highlight roadblocks. How exciting. Russia has similarly outlined the pursuit of advanced AI technology as a priority. Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, said in November that for the country to have its own complete range of AI technologies and products is a matter of national, technological, and value sovereignty. Last month, he highlighted the need to implement AI and robotic technologies to further develop the military. Well, that is true. I remember watching that broadcast. It was quite interesting. Quite interesting. I've had some more time to look at the soccer mom shot by the ICE agent the other day. And I'm still very much against what took place there. And I suppose I could go further into that, but I don't know. I have so many. There's a few other things I wanted to share. I wanted to talk about Venezuela and Greenland some more today. I still have a couple of other things to talk about, and the lunacy of taking Greenland, which is almost as loony as seizing Venezuela. And there was a where did that long article go that talked about the several people, well, quite a few people. Here it is: the heroes, dictators, and the long fight for sovereignty in Latin America before Maduro. It's a long, long article, and I'm not sure I have time to get through it all today. I may have to paraphrase, but before I get to that, you guys know that I like to refer to Tariq Cyril Amar, who's a historian from Germany and an expert on the culture of war, of World War II. He wrote an article about Venezuela and Greenland. It's not too long, and I wanted to share that with you. He starts with a question: what is the difference between Venezuela and Denmark? Apart, of course, from geography, food, weather, the fact that Venezuela used to at least condemn Israeli genocide of Palestine in accordance with basic moral norms and international law, while the Danish leadership has, in effect, sided with Israel in accordance with the revolting way things are done in the values-driven West. Here's a fun fact, he said. There is no real difference between these two countries, except U.S. President Trump wishes to see one. And at this point, it seems that he and his merry crew of hemispheric pirates are in the mood to treat Venezuela and Denmark in essentially the same manner, namely by doing whatever they want to them in the pursuit of raw material and geopolitical location. Trump himself has reiterated his belief that Washington needs Greenland. In other words, in his world, the same as he has the right to take it. Stephen Miller, who's nuts in my opinion, one of Trump's famiglia, many aggressive and sinister sidekicks, has claimed that Denmark's Greenland really belongs to the U.S. anyhow. And that there won't be any military resistance if Washington seizes it. That's most likely correct. Miller's wife, Katie, has already posted a map of Greenland covered in an American flag in the caption "Soon," even before her husband laid down the law, or rather its absence. We live in the real world that is governed by strength, that is governed by force, that is governed by power. That, fundamentally, Denmark is getting no more respect than Venezuela is ironic, obviously, because Venezuela has a history of resisting the U.S., where Denmark has a history of submission and is a member of two clubs of U.S. vassals, NATO and the EU. And yet, Washington is still openly threatening to take over a massive slice of Danish territory with the same total disregard for law and rule that it displayed while assaulting Venezuela. Sure, the American campaign in Venezuela has been more vicious and bloodier than a U.S. takeover of Greenland is likely to be, notwithstanding her safely rhetorical distance to Trump's equally verbal sallies. The Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has good chance not to be kidnapped in blindfolds and handcuffed while her guards are massacred by the dozens, as happened to Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores. Last but not least, Denmark's leftover colonialist claim to Greenland is much less impressive than Venezuela's clear right to sovereignty, its own resources, and last but not least, peace, all of which the U.S. has trampled upon. Yet, there it is. Under Trump, the old hierarchy between global North U.S. allies, really clients at best, vassals most of the time, and U.S. victims, pure and simple, mostly in the global South, had become unreliable at best. In the bad old days, countries such as Germany, Britain, France, and Italy always had to obey Washington when the chips were down. Witness, for instance, the massive CIA intervention in Italy, kicking off furiously with elections in 1948, the British-French Suez fiasco in 56, or the station of U.S. intermediate-range missiles in the early 80s. But they were allowed a little posturing, as under France's de Gaulle and Chirac and Germany's Brandt and Schroeder, for instance, and could reasonably expect to be spared the most brutally lawless and lawlessly brutal side of American domination as long as they kept complying when it mattered. With Washington now demanding a big piece of what is officially and legally Denmark and threatening to take it by force if it isn't handed over, the U.S. is signaling that these mostly European global north privileges have become extremely fragile. That's why some Europeans have been shocked to wake up one day and find out that they are allied to the world's biggest bully. German figurehead president and born-again Russophobe Frank-Walter Steinmeier, for instance, has discovered that the U.S. is turning the world into a robber's den. Congrats, Frank-Walter, the fastest brain in Germany, and now off with you to the end of the line behind the Vietnamese, the Afghans, the Iraqis, the Libyans, the Iranians, the Guatemalans, really all of Latin America, of course, and at least half of Africa, simply almost everyone outside of the global north. I believe I'm going to take this call just for grins. Hello, caller. How might I help you this morning?
Samuel?
That would be me.
This is Virginia calling in. I listened to you yesterday. I wanted to call in yesterday, but I wasn't able to.
Well, it's mighty kind of you to call in. How might I assist you?
Well, I'm thinking about all that you're saying about Trump. And I think actually, and now don't take this the wrong way, but I think that you're skewed. I think that you're biased.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Against Trump. Now, I'm not saying that I'm 100% for what Trump is doing, but I want you to take a look back over history. Okay?
I shall.
And let's talk about some of the things that Reagan did. And prior to Reagan getting in, which I was in the military at that time, we had all of the hostages, right? We had all these hostages. There was no end in sight. Why? Because we had a panty-waist, namby-pamby Jimmy Carter, and I have great respect for Jimmy Carter as a person, but as a president, he had no business being a president. However, the world could have its way with us, and communism could run rampant.
Okay.
But you know what? When the new sheriff in town showed up, which is President Reagan, there had to be some coming to Jesus moments, and people had to be held accountable. And that is kind of, and I'm saying that I don't agree with everything that Trump is doing, and I think that he's carried a lot of things too far. I don't believe that we should have a hand in the protests in Iran. I don't think that we should have. However, there's some complications in Venezuela, so I can't just hands down say that Venezuela, because remember that prior to all of us going in there and taking this over, let's remember that Cuba and China and Russia were in there playing in our playground, which all of those oil companies were from the U.S. Yes, okay? And we abandoned those. Okay, with the regime change, we abandoned those and we lost those. Okay, so really, if you were to leave it, all you're doing is allowing for other entities to step in. And you say, why do we care? Well, we care a lot because now those things are getting closer and closer to home. Greenland is another story in itself, but this is somewhat like a large family, and everyone has their own agendas. And let's say that you have someone, one or two people, that are for justice and want to see justice served But you have one radical, let's say it's an evil sister, that wants to totally come in and trample all over peace and truth and justice and has no mercy. Okay? At what point do you stop that evil sister from trampling over what is left of your family after they've had their way with everything? Is there a point at which, as Trump would be, and I would equate the evil sister to Trump, to the communists, why wouldn't you have someone that at least stands up and says, listen, if we allow them to continue in these communist ways or in their diabolical plans, then we will lose the whole world to that, which is actually what took place prior to World War II. Did we not just stand by and stand by and stand by as each of these vulnerable countries, and they could be vulnerable members of your family that are taken over and controlled by the evil one, right? How long do you let that happen? I think Trump at some point is trying to restore some semblance. Yeah, there's going to be divided sides. There are divided sides. And you will never have a complete quiet. I don't agree with going around facilitating war or anything else, but I actually believe that Maduro, at least at some level, wants to be under the U.S. protection at some level, particularly given, and do I agree with the incoming? No, I don't. But as we've seen in other countries, this really is a game of chess where we basically are just strategically, we have a regime in control. And then when that regime, that's really what it is, because there's very few sovereign countries in this world. Venezuela doesn't have a way to defend itself. Greenland doesn't have a way to defend itself. Even if Denmark is its so-called sponsor, really you are looking at Russia and the United States and China. And China is becoming a formidable power, but I would say only because you have the strengths of Russia and China together. I don't think on their own. And I honestly think that now we're looking forward to a world that has a lot of smaller factions, not just one or two or three superpowers. I think all of that power is being disseminated because of the rise of AI and technology and the advancements that we have in this so-called civilized society. What are your thoughts, Sam?
Well, I suppose at the very base, I come up to as the belief that we are somehow superior to anyone else's interpretation of what should be done in their own country, that we get to dictate whether or not Venezuela can be partners with China, with Russia, with us, with oil companies from the Middle East, with oil companies from China. That is not our role. We are not the global economic determiner of who gets to be where. And that has been my argument all along, is that all of this is the same old. This is only about money and only about maintaining the dollar, and that Trump understands exactly what he is doing. He wants to claim, falsely in my opinion, that the dollar is the only currency that the world can rely upon, can trade upon, can be the backbone of the world, is only the dollar. And many global powers over the millennia have also said the same thing. England, France, Spain, everybody.
Rome, and that
all
point,
of them
that
are
point
the same.
Actually, you and I agree upon,
well,
and that point. However,
and if
we're not
any
living
of this,
in a perfect world.
well,
Sam.
of course
we're
not. I never said we are. I never said we are. But evil, what makes our pursuit of the almighty dollar any more relevant than the pursuit of the almighty, I don't care, yuan or the rupee or the petrodollar or the ruble, for God's sake? What allows us the the arrogance to say that it's only the dollar that counts? It doesn't. I mean, none of the rest counts. Greenland has been pretty damn vocal about the fact that we're not there, that they have no desire to be a vassal of the United States. They don't want to be. They don't want to be occupied. They don't want to be the 51st state. They don't want to be subjugated to the great and powerful Trump.
Well,
they don't want to be.
That's true.
And that's
true. They want to be independent.
Well, exactly.
But but when you say they, that's not all of them, because there is a group of citizens over there that do want to be the 51st state.
Okay.
And
so
let's go
have
back
a
to
referenda.
Let's go back to your comment about it being all about money. Everything in this world is all about money. We know that.
Yep.
Everything is.
Yep.
So here's a proposal.
So that means Trump gets to do whatever he wants because he's defending the dollar, right?
Let me present to you another. Okay, so what if there were not the standard of the petrodollar? Okay, and let's say that there's not the standard of that we don't follow what the BRICS nations do. Instead, let's say that we said, okay, well, for universal transactions, let's have an accounting method that does not include any of these, and everyone is subjected to it. United States, China, Uruguay, Africa, everyone is subjected to the same one, and it doesn't include any of, and those are for universal global transactions or international transactions, let's put it that way. But within your own nation, because you and I both know that Russia and the U.S., we are under nationalist regimes, which I'm all for. I agree with 100% wholeheartedly. People should take care of their own affairs in their own family, in their own country, the way it is, and we don't need outside interference. Not from Trump, not from Putin, not from anyone outside of that. However, at some point, there does need to be that ability to be able to take on that third-party mediator if there is call or cause for that to take place. But what about that type of thing, which, you know, you and I can talk about that all day, and it's not going to make a difference on the global economic stage. But I think Trump is a businessman, and he's a hard hitter. And that's what he was hired for the job for. That's what his platform was. He wouldn't put up with this nonsense. So that's what we've got. And it beats the hell out of little weenie pants Biden, who was afraid to leave his own basement. And that much people are appreciative of. Do I like everything that Trump is doing? No. And in fact, I'm pretty disgusted by, you know, his intervention in Venezuela and the threats of Greenland, and saying, yeah, we should go around and make every country our playground or our one of our slaves.
Well,
which I don't like that
we're
term
on
either,
we're on the same page, because I'm in general a Trumpster supporter. I support the man. here in the United States, I don't support. There's very little that I'm in favor of that he has done internationally. Very little. And,
so what do you do about, okay, you say,
you don't do anything. It's not our job. It is not our job. I'm against interventionalist. We've done it over and over and over. And to what benefit? I mean, I outlined yesterday, if you were listening, some 60-something times that the U.S. has engaged in regime change, bombings, everything like that since World War II. We have engaged in, and of them, literally 90% were failed, or foolish, or stupid, or regime change, or created scenarios worse than what existed prior to our intervention. And look, just have a look at Ukraine and look at what we have caused, and we have destroyed a good country. Now, they've done a hell of a lot of it themselves, but we facilitated that BS with a regime change operation in 2014 because we wanted to put Russia on its heels. We've been idiots on the global stage for a very long time, and it has not changed in my lifetime. We have done nothing but be idiots and supporters of morons like the Lindsey Grahams of the world and the other idiots that are pushing that sort of thing. They're just idiots, and they do it for their own lining of their own pockets, and that is exactly
really
what's
this
happened.
All comes down to
I know.
War is profitable,
right? And Trump is no different than any of the rest of them. Is how it turns out. He is just as big a neocon as the rest, and that's unfortunate to say that because I never would have believed that before. But when Lindsey Graham is dictating and Marco Rubio are dictating what your foreign policy is, you're the moron, for allowing them in.
This goes back to, we already know, and I think we've talked about this before, that we already know that what we're being subjected to is not just an exclusivity here in the United States. This is the Council of 300. This is the globalist elite, which I don't believe that Trump is globalist. I believe he's a nationalist, and that is also what Putin is.
Yeah, but he's subjugated himself to the globalist morons like the Lindsey Grahams of the world. What else has he done?
No, what I think is that it advances his agenda for our economy, because this really is about greed and money and control. And
but he's passing it on to he's passing the financial interests on to his own cohorts and equals right now.
Absolutely.
And so he's no different than the rest of them. Sadly.
No, except it's a different faction in charge.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what we're going to get, because
that's right.
This really is about factions ruling.
Correct. And as soon as he is gone, it'll go back to the other faction again. And I've been saying that for a very long time. And I'm glad you agree with that, because that is
but the
absolutely the truth
of Trump on its face. Okay, yes, we should not be in other countries, and I think 90%, and I think you even pointed this out yourself, 90% of Americans would not go along with this. Okay, but 90% of us just want peace in our homes and in our families, and we just don't really care what's going on anywhere else, because it's difficult enough dealing with our own drama in our own lives, let alone taking on everyone else's.
Ain't that
and that's
the
where
truth.
It really stands for all of us, no matter what country you're in, because both you and I know how Russians truly feel about us. They love us. We love them. We feel that way about most other countries. The evil people are the rulers and the people that control the people.
Exactly. And on that note, sadly, I have to let you go because I got a whole minute and 15 seconds to wrap it up. So I appreciate your call in. You have a very good day.
Yep. You too. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye. And there she goes. This is International Flavor. I am Samuel Trapp. I appreciate you being here today and listening in to my ramblings, which come to you every morning from 7:30 to 9 a.m. here from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. You can listen to all the back shows at internationalflavor.com. You can go to damradio.com/schedule to pay attention to the schedule on a regular basis, and I would appreciate it if you did. At any rate, thanks for joining us today, and I will see you again for the last show of the week tomorrow morning, 7:30 to 9 a.m. Have a very nice day.